Hi, this is Kane with the Rusty Chains, and today we're going to be doing the top 10 games that are dead in the water. This means that shortly after release, the game's player base has left due to bad developers, lack of content, or etc. Hope you enjoy!
Assassin's Creed Unity dropped on November 11, 2014. Ubisoft had huge potential for success as the first new generation game in their flagship series. Largest map, insane amount of civilians, revamped parkour, and finally co-op in the open world. Unity was shaping up to be the best Assassin's Creed ever. That was until the review embargo was activated. Nobody could release their reviews until a day after the game launched. That seemed suspicious enough, but fans turned their heads until they played it. Glitches galore. The game's frame rate was terrible, and characters would turn entirely invisible aside from their eyes and teeth. The reviews that talked about this flowed out soon after. Fans were furious, and this was the final nail in the series' coffin for many bored fans. This game is largely attributed as the reason there will be no new main AC game in 2016. Only the second of 9 years since the series began that there has not been a new major entry. Within a week of release, Unity had been returned to the shelves of local GameStops, and the game was selling for $20. As an apology, the game's first expansion, Dead Kings, was given free to everybody, and the people that got the Season Pass could get a free AAA release from the company, including Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, Far Cry 4, and others. Guess which one of those other games is on this list?
At our ninth spot, we have Mighty Number 9. Just kidding, we're going to slam that one later. The ninth spot actually goes to 2013's Aliens Colonial Marines, which released to less than spectacular critical reviews. The game was promoted to have squad-based tactical gameplay, which was later dropped to make the gameplay more accessible, and had repetitive gauntlet-esque gameplay that involves going from point A to point B, killing everything in your path. The game AI was dumber than a box of rocks, standing still while you unloaded into them, or even running into walls, and also had pretty bad graphics that didn't help the gameplay at all. The ad campaign actually spawned a lawsuit, claiming that the game's showings at conventions such as E3 and PAX were not accurate representations of the game, although the lawsuit was dropped. After it's all said and done, the game scored very low, garnering a 48 out of 100 on Metacritic for the PC version.
Remember Homefront? It was a charming little shooter from 2011 about the American resistance in a Korean-ruled USA. The sequel finally released on May 17th of this year after trading multiple developers and publishers during the time gap between games. Now this game wasn't a very clear follow-up. It had guns, he shot Koreans, and it took place in America. That's pretty much it aside from the word Homefront in the title. The game launched with bugs, terrible optimization, a short story that wasn't helped by poor voice acting, and a pitifully small open world. They even botched jumping. Seriously, jumping. It felt heavy and sluggish, with vaulting over cover sometimes being more of a challenge than the artificial difficulty inflated by infinite enemies. Perhaps the most insulting thing about this was the fact that within 2 months, the game had over $40 of DLC, while hardly any of the bugs or performance issues had been fixed.
Battlefield Hardline was out in 2015 and was hyped up to be a big change of pace from the modern military shooter that was Battlefields 2 through 4. While the cops and robbers setting was refreshing to some people, it didn't really fit with the gameplay and just felt like a copy and paste of the previous Battlefield game, Battlefield 4. The campaign was episode-based, with many collectibles to find and pseudo-stealth gameplay that just turned into sneaking around and tasing this dude, sneaking around and tasing this dude, and yeah, you get it. I think that the gunplay was really fun, and that the multiplayer level design was quite cool. However, the shortcomings of the game greatly overshadowed any strong points that the game has. It lasted much longer on consoles, as it was pretty much dropped right after release on PC. However, it did eventually die on consoles, lasting about a year later. Metacritic gave it a 71 out of 100 on PC due to its extreme averageness. The game wasn't very innovative, and what kind of criminals have helicopters?
Ah yes, The Division, the second of Ubi's 3 games on this list. This game had so much hype surrounding it. An elite force of specialized agents who came out of hiding in America's worst moments? Baller! All of New York fully explorable too? Cool! A chunk of it won't be in the game after all? Okay, I guess it can still be cool. Now that is what went through the minds of players awaiting the game. Those same players were saddened when this new shooter MMORPG launched in March filled with glitches, server outages, and the worst sin an MMO can commit: player collision in the hub. You can see videos and screen caps of players actually being forced to line up to receive quests or access shops. And all of that is just what fills the time in between long walks through the New York streets with nearly zero enemy presence, or your time in the horribly unbalanced PvP dark zone.
The 2014 release of Watch Dogs was met with a resounding meh. The gameplay was promoted as having you being an expert at hacker slash assassin slash uncle, but you're mostly just Lizard Squad pressing one button and having things happen. The car mechanics were just god-awful, and the gunplay was mediocre at best. The stealth mechanics were solid, however when you only have one good thing in a sea of bad things, well, your game is bad. Watch Dogs' plot could have been solved by choosing a different day to go out with your niece, and Aiden Pierce is just the end piece of a loaf of bread transmogrified into a human being, showing no discernible emotions, like a toasty Terminator. The footage shown at E3 looked much better graphically than what was eventually released, where on PC at the highest settings it looked like a 7th generation console game. Observe_K9's blandness is reflected in its Metacritic's 77 PC rating, and the game never really gained all that much of a following, leaving this one dead in the water.
There was mighty big hype surrounding this game. Oh, sorry, I had to get out of the way early, yeah? Anyway, this game got its start as a Kickstarter project marketed towards fans of older Mega Man games. What they got in July 2016 was too similar in some areas and too far off in others. Boring level design combined with lackluster bosses and soundtrack left nothing but a watered down clone of its inspiration. The game was panned by critics and a disappointment to the fans it specifically set out to please. I guess Mighty Number 9 was pretty weak at the end of the day. Okay, I'm done. Kane, quick, next game!
Released in 2014, Titanfall was supposedly the most innovative shooter this console generation, but it was just boring. The game wasn't innovative at all, really. The coolest thing it did have was giant robots fighting each other, and parkour when you're a squishy human. You may say, but what about the Smart Pistol? Or, as it's called in the gaming world, aim hacks, which have been around for decades at this point. According to the developers, there was a campaign. However, these reports cannot be confirmed at this time. The mech combat was the infantry combat, but bigger, and there were so few maps and weapons that a single year after release they had to release all of the DLC for free as a, quote, anniversary gift, unquote. While the gameplay was solid, it was also repetitive as all hell, and did nothing fresh with its gameplay, although it did earn an 86 on Metacritic. However, Titanfall 2 seems to be taking all of this criticism as advice and building a much more solid game.
From the studio that brought you Borderlands, have a kinda sorta Borderlands ripoff. Battleborn has a total of 25 characters to choose from in a 10-mission campaign where the writing is so close to Borderlands along with the same character splash intros that you sometimes forget you're playing a different game. Many missions are repetitive, and AI will often get stuck, holding up your progress. Each character's level is reset after every mission though, but they rapidly level up again and allow quick speccing each mission. Now that sounds kind of like a MOBA, doesn't it? That's because the game's main appeal is a MOBA PvP mode. But don't call it that. Gearbox doesn't like that. Now Battleborn had potential, but it was dashed by trying to go up against marketing giant and now cultural phenomenon Overwatch. What few players came to Battleborn were left unhappy with the competitive experience. Much of the gameplay was unbalanced, and there were hard counters that made some things useless while others were near impossible to beat. The biggest issue was the servers. They took between 5 to 15 minutes to get a match together. Not good for a competitive experience. During the frequent server outages, you could not even play the campaign because the game requires constant connection to both the internet and the game servers. Many people realized this, and the player count dropped to less than 1,000 within 2 months. Ouch. The final nail in the coffin was when the $60 game with the $20 season pass was included as a small fraction in a $15 Humble Bundle soon after release.
Oh, Evolve. Evolve had a neat idea. It was the birth of the asymmetrical multiplayer game, which is a genre that has exploded lately. Evolve handled it poorly, though. Long load times only to join an unbalanced match was bad enough. The imbalance and poor optimization made things go from bad to worse. When the developers quickly pumped out $130 worth of DLC shortly after release, while ignoring many issues it had, most players refused to even pick the game up, let alone continue playing. The game basically accepted its fate, all of the DLC and even the game itself, all free hardly a year after its release. While the gameplay could be fun at times, the slow, hide-and-seek style gameplay gives it a very repetitive, boring feel that couldn't even keep some hardcore fans. The asymmetrical multiplayer genre survived, though, with popular games like Dead by Daylight being released in the style frequently. So, that was our list of games that were abandoned by their players shortly after release. Do you agree or disagree with anything on the list? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to check us out on Twitch 4 days a week, Wednesday through Saturday. And always, stay rusty.